watching on YouTube. All right, everybody. Without further ado, very special guest today, David Gogo. Nice to meet you, Dave.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Do you go by David? Dave? Gogo?
Usually David these days. Yeah.
Okay, right on. So you've been in the music scene a long time, correct?
Yeah, longer than I realized until the pandemic hit. And I've been spending, because I'm just at home, we can't do gigs. But it's given me time to be at home, which I've never really done in my life. But I'm going through all these old boxes of stuff that, 25 years on the road or 30 years on the road of coming home and throwing stuff in the corners. I'll sort through that in a while. So, I'm digging up the craziest things, old posters and tickets from gigs. So, yeah, it's been basically I started playing in the bars in Nanaimo when I was 16 years old, and I'm 52 now. So.
Jeez. Yeah. So you were born and raised in Nanaimo, Canada.
Yep.
How did you get into music, and what were your influences back then? What was your favorite kind of musician or band and that got you hooked on getting into music?
Well, when I was like 5 years old, I saw Elvis on TV, and he was still alive. But I just looked and went, "Wow, that's so cool!" And that's what I wanted to do. And I can't think of a time in my life where I didn't have either a toy guitar, like my parents had to give me a toy guitar to appease me. And then eventually a ukulele, which I didn't really play as a ukulele. It was just I wasn't big enough to hold a guitar. So that was the first thing. And then my dad had some good records. He had some, including Hank Williams and CCR, but he also had some B.B. King and Canned Heat. So that was, and Taj Mahal and Otis Redding. So that's where I kind of got into the blues thing. And that really appealed to me. But as a teenager, it was the British rock bands of the 60s that, really got me going. But then you kind of dig through that and you realize that they were very influenced by blues and rhythm and blues.
Yeah.
The Rolling Stones and the Kinks, and then even the Beatles, the Who. So so those bands, and then Jimi Hendrix and Cream, and then I got into the blues through those guys.
Awesome. And that's your favorite kind of genre is the blues. That's your jam, right?
Yeah, I'm known as like a blues rock performer, I guess. I don't really have blinders on. I'm definitely not a traditionalist, but I certainly appreciate the very traditional blues. In fact, since the pandemic's been happening, I've been listening to a lot of the real original blues from the 20s and 30s. It's amazing. Some people, I know a lot of musicians don't like Spotify because they don't pay very well royalty-wise, right. But it's a great resource. And the thing is, I didn't realize how much these recordings have been digitally cleaned up and remastered over the years, where my collection of old blues records is in the back room on vinyl, which I love. But those vinyl albums that I got, they were taken from 2-track tape recordings of the original acetates and 78. So they're very poppy and crackly, and it's just physically difficult to listen to sometimes. But now they've cleaned all that stuff up. So I've been listening to Tommy Johnson and Robert Johnson and Charlie Patton so I dig that. But my own playing, I mean, I listen to a lot of rock too. So
cool. When you're listening, are you into the vinyl, or is that not your thing?
Whatever's closest.
Yeah.
Like I say, I've been cleaning up a lot. So my back room, if I'm in the back room, I listen to vinyl because I got a ton of vinyl back there. Cool. And if I'm in the room I'm in now, I usually just get the old computer going. But mind you, I had an offer today if someone had an extra turntable, so I might put the turntable in the front room here as well. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So you started back at 16. You said you were a guitarist first and foremost, right? And so who was your favorite guitarist back then?
Well, I loved Hendrix and Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck. But the big turnaround was when I was 15. That's when Stevie Ray Vaughn put out his first album, and it really freaked me out because he was a young guy then. He was still kind of a new guy and a young guy, and so I got to meet him very soon after that, and I got to hang out with him several times. Before he unfortunately passed away. So he was a really big influence because he was the guy that showed a young guy like me that you could still do what these older guys had done. And he was very accommodating and very friendly to me. So that was a big turning point.
How does a 15-year-old get to meet Stevie Ray Vaughn?
The first time I saw him and met him, it was just very briefly. There used to be in Vancouver on Granville Street, there was a record store called Kelly's. And I'd gone over for the concert. Believe it or not, he was opening for Men at Work. That
Oh, wow.
was the first gig, I think, in Vancouver. And I was just walking down Gravel Street because I got to Vancouver early, and he was doing a signing. So I got him to sign the album, and that was that.
Cool.
But when he came up the next year for Couldn't Stand the Weather, he was playing in Victoria on the island here at the Royal Theatre. So I had gone just down to the theatre early, and it was funny. On the walk down the sidewalk, there was a guy on a payphone just before cell phones. And I was wearing my Stevie Ray Vaughn shirt that I had bought at the previous concert, and I had a hat like his and everything. And this guy on the payphone just stopped, and he goes, "Hey, man, are you going to the concert tonight?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Right on." And so when I got to the venue, I saw Stevie and the band going in, and I was across the street. It was a very busy street, and I was trying to run across and say hi to them, but they got in the building before I did. So I was just hanging out at the back door, and eventually the promoter came out. And I think this was the first concert he ever did. His name's Mark Norman. He ended up with Periscope Production in Vancouver, and then with CPI. He's a real big guy in the business now. But this was one of his first concerts. So he came out for a smoke break and saw me standing there with my Stevie Ray Vaughn shirt and my hat, and asked what my story was. So he said, "Well, I'll see if I can get you an autograph." So he went in, and then he came out with a small poster, like the playbill kind of thing, autographed by Stevie and the band, and also a backstage pass. And he says, "Why don't you come in?" Wow. Stevie says he wants to meet you. So what it was the guy previously on the payphone was Stevie's manager, and he said, "Oh, I saw that kid. Tell him to come back here." So
No way.
yeah, next thing you know, I'm there for the sound check, and Stevie asks, she says, "You play guitar?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, play my guitar. I want to hear what it sounds like out in the room." So he put that guitar, the number 1 Strat, on me, and I'm 15, and he just wanted to go stand up. So I just kind of played some blues with the band, and so he wanted to hear what it sounded like in the room, and he said it was cool because the thing is, as a guitar player, you never get to hear your rig live the way that an audience would. So he wanted to get that. So when I look back at that now, it's a pretty insane memory. But anytime he'd come up to the West Coast, I'd go over and kind of bullshit my way backstage and
Nice.
and hang. And the last time I saw him was not long before he passed away, like maybe a month before. And I had just gone down to. Are you in Austin right now?
I am, yes.
I had just gone down to Austin just to check the scene out. And I would have been, I think, maybe 20. I must have been 21, but I did have fake ID. But anyways, I went to the original Antones the second night I was there, and Albert Collins, who's one of my favorite players ever, was playing there. And I knew Albert a bit from opening for him in Canada. And Albert invited me on his tour bus. So I went up and toured with Albert just through America. But anyways, I just got back from doing that. And I think I might have been getting my first record deal. So Stevie was just asking how I was doing. And same thing, sound check, checking out the guitars. But it was a really good visit. And it was really nice because when he went to leave, he gave me a really, really solid hug, and he said, "Hey, man, you're doing really well. You're doing what you want to do." But the thing he taught me, and Albert Collins the same, is you got to become your own person. Don't just try to, and you can emulate people, but don't be a copycat.
Sure.
Get your own thing. And Stevie said, "Remember when you used to show up dressed up like me?" He says, "Now you got your own thing." I wasn't wearing a Stevie Ray Vaughn hat and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool experience.
Awesome story. Hey, so do you still have that poster from the very first one he signed when you were 15?
Oh, hells yeah. And I even have a belt that he gave me.
No way.
I think the first time I was there, it was like a Mexican style, like a wraparound kind of cloth belt. And same thing, since I've been cleaning up all this stuff in my house, I'm putting things on display now. So I got one display, it's a big frame, and it's like just these various things that I got from him over the years. So one is in his handwriting, like his home address and phone number, just on a scrap of paper. One of his guitar picks. I actually have photos of the two of us, which is, because back then, before cell phones, I'm really fortunate to have photos of all these people that I got to play with and meet. And that poster, and I've got so it's all on display now.
That's cool.
And the belt.
It must bring back so many great memories finding all this stuff and going through it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. So moving forward, you signed your first record to EMI back in 1994.
Yeah, when they first courted me, it was still Capitol Records, but then the Canadian division became EMI Music Canada. So Great. Yeah, but it was a really weird experience. I had a little blues band up in Canada, but we were really high energy, and we started to do really well. And we'd open for people like like Johnny Winter and you know, the bigger names, and people, we started to build a good following of our own, so much so that we even got to play the Commodore in Vancouver as headliners at the time. But the EMI folks, they didn't quite get it. You know, they figured as soon as I signed with them, they decided I shouldn't be this blues rock guitar player, which is what I was.
Yeah.
So am I allowed to make swear words?
Yeah, of course.
So we fucked around for like a year at least of them trying to, you know, turn me into something else. And in the meantime, in that time, all of a sudden, Johnny Lang comes out and Kenny Wayne Shepherd comes out and the Archangels. And I'm like, this is what I wanted to do, you know?
Yeah.
So the record we did, I was actually pretty happy with. It was a guy, Rick Parasher, who unfortunately has passed away now, down in Seattle. And he produced like the first Pearl Jam record and Blind Melon and Temple of the Dog. So a really cool guy, and I really got along with him. But that was kind of the compromise with me and the record label. It was, you know, they wanted me to be, you know, they were 6 months behind and everything, you know. They wanted me to be this grunge guy, and I didn't. But so Rick, we kind of had a compromise. But it only lasted one album, and then I just thought, fuck this, what am I doing, you know?
So then, how young were you when you started writing? Because you wrote a lot of songs.
I have written a lot of songs kind of since that time. I wasn't into writing when I was first signed. I was just so excited about all this great music that was already out there. And right. You know, so we would find these old blues songs and maybe take an old country blues song, like from a guy like Son House, who, a song of his from the 30s, and then add a band to it and rock it up, you know? I guess kind of in a way that Led Zeppelin or someone would have done.
Right.
But after my first record or so, then songwriting became more interesting to me. And now I enjoy it very much. And I've put out 15 albums or something now. You know, a couple of them were live records, so they don't really count. But I mean, that's a lot of songs, you know.
That's a lot. I have written down here you released 12 solo albums plus those live albums. So I mean, that's pretty amazing in itself. And then, so 2014, is that when you signed with Cordova Bay Records, the indie label?
What had happened was, you know, I kind of had to go home with my tail between my legs because, you know, local boy does good, signs the major label deal. Well, we only did one record, and that was only really released in Canada and certain parts of Europe. I mean, we sold a few records, and we did, but it was just that's a whole other podcast. It's just how goofy it was. It was just a comedy of errors, you know.
Wow.
So I thought I got to get back to my roots. So what I did was the local music bar in Nanaimo, the Queen's Hotel, had put a studio in their basement, but the studio was also rigged so you could record live. You know, they had all the lines going upstairs to the venue. So I put a band together of some pretty hot players. We were unrehearsed enough that it was fresh and kind of, you know, living on the edge, but just rehearsed enough that we, you know, wasn't going to be a lot of train wrecks. So I told the boys, I said, you know, I'm going to roll tape for a couple of these nights, but we weren't really sure what nights, and it was still tape then too. And so I just recorded a live album, live off the floor, and only a couple of originals, but really screaming, and started licensing it out. A record company in Europe called Dixie Frog got a hold of it, and it really took off in Europe, especially in Holland and Belgium, places like that. And we were really selling a lot of records, which was so goofy. I mean, I just go into my local bar and whip off a couple nights, pick what we thought were the 10 best takes, and you know, and meanwhile I'm thinking of all this time and money that was wasted with EMI. So I approached Cordova Bay soon after that about licensing the album, and they wanted to do a deal, and I've been with them ever since.
That's awesome. So it's pretty amazing. My next question was Europe. You kind of really took off in Europe, more so than the United States, correct?
Yeah, I usually go to Europe. I mean, I'm not a big star or anything over there, but I usually go over once or twice a year and play some shows. But America has eluded me. Anytime I've played there, we've done well. I've played some festivals, and people are like, "Who's this guy? How come we never heard of you?" So I don't know. I've really been trying, you know.
Yeah.
Once, you know, the last few years it's been a little easier to get known. I started doing my own podcast, just talking about things we're talking about today. My experiences playing with all these great musicians. So then I'll kind of put a link to that on like the Johnny Winter fan page if I've got an episode about Johnny Winter or a BB King. So the way the interwebs works is, you know, people are discovering my music just through my stories and stuff. And a few years ago on Sirius XM, when Bill Wax was there, he started playing. It was funny. They picked this one song. It's an old Willie Dixon number called "It Don't Make Sense That You Can't Make Peace," and it became like kind of a hit on B.B. King's Bluesville. But I didn't realize it. And we just recorded it once in the studio, and I've never actually played it live. When we showed up to play a festival, I think it was in Duluth, Minnesota, and everyone was expecting to hear our hit, you know.
Yeah.
It's like I had no idea. We'd never played it, but you know, I'll go wherever they want me to go. But yeah, Europe's been a little easier to get my foot in the door than America.
Cool. Now, did you get to play places like? Have you played in Austin and places like Memphis at BB King's and stuff back in the day, or?
Just a little bit. When my first record came out, we played in Austin. We played at the Steamboat, which I think is on 6th. And I sat in with Albert Collins at Antone's that time. And what else have I done? Not a whole lot. And when the first record, we also did some touring, opening for Joe Satriani. So that was cool. We got to play like the Beacon Theater in New York City and
Awesome.
like some real big rooms like that. Excuse me, but not a whole lot. And that Albert Collins trip, you know, like we went out and I played with Albert, but not a lot.
Right on. So you were nominated for a couple of Juno Awards, correct? Blues Album of the Year and Breakthrough Artist of the Year. That's pretty cool in itself.
I actually have 5 losses and 1 disqualification with Juno. So I've had 6 nominations.
Jeez. What's
5 losses and a disqualification. So I got to tell you, you know, the first couple times you get nominated, it is just an honor to get nominated. But by time number 6 and you still don't win, it's, you know, you're great. But I know where all the where all the good parties are.
Perfect. How do you get disqualified? Explain that real quick.
Steroids. No, it was just once again, my career is filled with these series of gaffes, and it was a live record, one of the live records, which wasn't even supposed to be an album. This is a weird thing. We played at the Burnaby Blues Festival just outside of Vancouver, and there was a guy, Stormin Norman, used to have a Sunday blues program on CFox Radio. So Norm was going to be on the site at this festival, and he asked if he could record our set. And the idea was to play some of the live cuts and then put interviews in between. And that's what it was done. But it got so popular, these live recordings, that people started sharing them on the interwebs. And I was in between projects. So I talked to my record label, and they said, you know, why don't we just put this out? We'll just slap a cover on it, and it'll be like an in-between project. And next thing you know, it gets nominated for a Juno, and it starts taking off, and it's doing really well. But anyways, they nominated us, the whatever it is, Caris or whatever the society is. But then they realized that some of the criteria we didn't meet it, because you're not supposed to have songs that you've previously recorded on a new release that can be considered for a Juno. Like, so that way the Tragically Hip can't put out the Tragically Hip's greatest hits and be up for a Juno.
Right.
But so our argument was, well, there's only some of these songs we've done before, but they're absolutely new performances. I don't know of anyone that's put out a live record of completely new performances. And the other thing was, shouldn't you guys have known this before you nominated us?
Right.
So we'd done a big press release. We'd already booked our plane tickets to fly to Edmonton for the Junos and booked a showcase. Jeez. But at the end of the day, we just thought, well, let's just turn this around. We did a big Spin Doctor thing on it. I honestly think I got more publicity out of being disqualified, than I would have if I'd won the Blues Juno, because the Juno Awards you see on TV, they only give away about 7 awards, and it's the same people, and that's the big hockey rink show. Yeah. The night before, they have a gala dinner, and they give away like 30 or 40 awards.
Okay.
You know, for all the engineering and classical and jazz and roots and blues. But by us going on there, I mean, there was a mention in Billboard magazine. I remember Peter Mansbridge, Juno Gaff, you know, and you know, I get to the awards, and you know, Vicky Gabbros going, "Oh man, you got a raw deal," and you know, so yeah. You know, you do what you do. I didn't think I'd ever get nominated again after that, because I actually turned around at one point at one of these cocktail parties, and I was face to face with Dean Cameron, who at the time was president of Caris, like the president of the Junos, and he used to be president of EMI. And we didn't have a real good breakup at EMI, and here I am running around the Junos telling everybody how fucking stupid they are. He just looked at me and he goes, "What did he say?" I'm trying to remember. Oh, he just went, nice publicity, David. And I said, thank you, Dean. And I thought, that's it. I'll never be nominated again. But I've been nominated 3 or 4 times since. So
Oh,
that's good.
like you said, it's an amazing accomplishment in itself. Too bad you never did win, but like you said, the fact that
It ain't over yet.
it ain't over yet for sure. So music's in your extended family. You're the cousin of Paul Gogo from Trooper, the keyboardist, right?
Yeah, cousin Paul.
And singer John Gogo as well.
Yeah, John's put out several albums. So they're brothers. Paul and John are brothers. All of their kind of siblings, or most of them, are in some capacity in the music business. Cousin Marie, and it's funny because cousin Lawrence is a lighting technician, and cousin Tom used to play drums and percussion. Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot of, but it's weird because we never really saw each other much growing up, and we never really played with each other. And it's not similar styles of music, but
yeah,
it's there for sure.
Ah, cool. I think I saw Trooper back in Banff in the, early 90s, maybe, if memory serves me correct.
Well,
long time ago.
Yeah, well, Paul's not an original member of Trooper, but he's been in Trooper for probably 30 years now.
Okay. Well,
yeah,
wow.
like a touring member. Yeah.
So how many times you cross Canada, you figure, with touring and stuff like that since you started?
Well, what I do now is I have one band here on Vancouver Island, another band in Ottawa, and I actually have some players in Holland as well.
Oh, wow.
So what I do is I kind of fly back and forth and work with these different bands. And in the last couple of years, I actually had a rhythm section in the prairies too. Just because it's such a vast country, it's so difficult to keep an entire band on the road like that. So I just kind of, do it kind of, like by sections. Plus in the last 15 years or so, I've been doing a lot of solo concerts where I've got an old 1930 National steel guitar and an old Gibson, and I go out and I tell a lot of stories as that, and it's a whole different thing. So, I mean, I've been all over the place, and that's the one thing about the pandemic. I don't necessarily miss the travel so much as I miss going to these certain places and seeing people that and playing these cool venues and eating at these great restaurants and just going, like when I do my solo shows, especially if I'm out in the prairies or something, I get into the rental car and I'll take a couple extra days here and there and just explore. And I'd like to take photographs of old abandoned towns and stuff like that. So yeah. That's the kind of the thing I miss about it. So I've been across the country quite a bit. I haven't really been to Eastern Canada too much, only a couple times.
Okay.
I'd like to do that a bit more, but you kind of go where you can get work as well.
That's cool that you actually take those days off, because like a lot of bands and stuff don't. It's just it's regimented, and they've been to every city across Canada and stuff, but they've really never been and toured around anything or got to experience the cool stuff that each city has to offer. So that's cool that you did that for yourself. Yeah.
Well, you can't do it with a band really, because it's just too much money to put everyone up. And maybe some guys don't want to, maybe two guys say, yeah, that'd be great. The other two guys go, man, I just want to go home and watch the fucking hockey game or something,
Yeah.
So,
sure.
Yeah, so it's a lot easier to do as a solo artist. But I know what that's like, especially over in Europe. Sometimes it's so whirlwind and, I'm going to these amazing places, but you don't get a chance to see them. It's kind of like, you get windshield time, sound check, quickly try to get something to eat, gig, back to the hotel to try to sleep for a couple hours, and you're back on the road.
Yeah, crazy. What was it like guesting on Tom Cochrane's Mad Mad World album? Must have been a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, I was really young, and I'd never really recorded, so it was a good learning experience. I didn't really do a hell of a good job. I saw Tom a while ago when he was playing in the Nanaimo, and he was telling me I did a great job. Well, I didn't. I really didn't know what I was doing. But it was good in several ways. Number one, I got to meet the engineer, producer guy, Joe Hardy, who's now passed away. But Joe was really cool and worked a lot with ZZ Top and people like that. So it was interesting to work with him, just talking about getting guitar tones. Cochrane was fantastic. He had come to see me play, and we were on the same label at the time. So it was a really great experience for me. I mean, I get to play on a million-selling album, But the night before, I had played in London, Ontario, and I had to get up really early and drive. I forget, they were recording somewhere in a house out in the country in Ontario. but I had got this review, and the funny thing was, it wasn't even an album. It was kind of a demo tape that we were going to send out to try to get gigs. And the strange thing was, I'd recorded it with Johnny Fay and Gord Sinclair of the Tragically Hip, because we shared management at the time. So here I made this demo tape with the rhythm section of the Tragically Hip, and some guy from a local entertainment rag in London hated it. And you could not have written a worse review if you tried, if you sat down. I mean, there wasn't one nice thing, and it was just terrible. It's like, oh, this guy, he sucks so bad, and maybe after years and years of practice and a good tuning device for his guitar, he might be an adequate bar band. Like, it was just a horrible review. So I was kind of in shell shock. So I showed it to Tom Cochran, and Tom just read it and kind of just started chuckling. And he looks at me and he says, is this your first bad review? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, get used to it. He says, because they can't all be good. He says, and that's the thing, because when you read all these great things that people say about you, take it with a grain of salt, but take everything with constructive criticism, you know? Yeah. Okay, because if you believe all the good stuff that people are writing about you, and then all of a sudden, when you get a bad one, it's going to hit you hard, you know? So try to just keep an even keel. So that was really good advice.
Awesome. A couple more quick questions. Well, how many guitars do you have, and what would be your favorite one? Do you have a favorite?
I have a lot of guitars. I've been doing a thing when the pandemic first started. I was doing a thing on my Facebook music page, just kind of showing one a day or something that went on for weeks. Well, when I do my solo shows, like I say, the 1930 National, it's made out of brass, nickel plated. That's a pretty special guitar. But I've got a lot of pretty special guitars. For like there's gigging guitars, and then there's what I call the wall guitars that kind of hang at home. But I play them all, and they're all on my recordings. That's why I usually like to record back home in Nanaimo, because I have access to all these wonderful instruments. But I used to play a Fender Strat a lot, but it was just one of the original Squire Strats with these Evans pickups. I beat the hell out of it for 25 years. And then all of a sudden, I switched to playing a Gold Top Les Paul. So for the last couple of years, I've got a 72 Gold Top that's been customized with some noiseless pickups and Bigsby. But, since the pandemic started, I get to sit at home and play all my wonderful guitars that I've had for all this time that I never get to play.
Cool. So speaking of the pandemic, after this is over, hopefully sooner than later. Good Christ. What's the plans? Do we have a tour lined up? Do we have anything lined up?
Well, it's so difficult because you can't make any plans. I mean, I've had a couple times in the last year, we've actually had a few gigs, like just small capacity, and we're ready to go. And then 2 days before, they pulled the plug here in BC and put the restrictions back on, and the venues aren't allowed. So it's so difficult to plan anything. But I've realized that when it does open up, it's going to be really slow, and it's going to be limited capacity. So my plan is to have my buddy Steve Mariner come out in June and record an album at my house that's more of an acoustic, rootsy album that will be easy to play live, either just me solo or me and one other person, because I think that's the way it's going to be. We're going to be going out and playing to like only being allowed 50 people in a venue or something like that. So you won't be able to bring the full band. Right. So that's what I'm going to do. I've just been writing with that in mind. Trying to a more of a slim down, trimmed down kind of a deal, and then hopefully that we can ride that until it's time to make the next more electric record.
For sure. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, David. Some fascinating stories, and I'm sure you've got a million more. Maybe we could do this sometime down the line. After maybe when you get back on the road and back out and touring and stuff. So where can people? You're on every streaming platform. Obviously, people can find all your music there.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and I do all that social media stuff myself, which is fun because it really adds a personal connection to me and my potential audience. And then, all my music's on Spotify and Apple, whatever you want. Plus, I've got my Soul Bender podcast, which is available on all platforms as well, where I'm kind of just telling these stories like we're talking about today, but with a certain theme for every show.
Sure.
Spotify has been pretty good. I actually put a single out back in October. I called it a Lockdown Rockdown. And I promised myself I wouldn't write anything about the pandemic. I don't want to celebrate it. So there's going to be no,
right.
keep your distance or lockdown blues or anything. I just wrote a song about a chick who likes to party. So we put that out. Just as a gift to the fans, just to say, hey, we're still rocking, and we're thinking about you. Why don't you do a little dance in your kitchen tonight with your glass of wine, and here it is. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, I hope this is over sooner than later, and not only you, but every musician out there, and all the people behind the scenes too, can get back out on the road and do what they love, because this has been really tough on everybody. So I wish you all the best.
Thanks. Yeah, well, that's what I worry about is the people that work at the venues and the sound crews. They're the people that I can still go out. Like, I'm already getting offers this summer to go do private backyard socially distanced events. I can get by. Cool. I can squeak by, But you can't just say to someone, hey, how about I go set up my lighting rig in your backyard for your 50th birthday and you give me $1,000? Like, that just doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
And I just hope that, the venues, I mean, we got to have places to play. So, fingers crossed, man.
Awesome. Well, everybody go out and support David. Listen to him on Spotify, buy his music, and follow him on Twitter, Instagram. And what's your handle on there where everybody can find you?
I think Gogo Guitar is Instagram. And I think David Gogo Blues is the other. For my Facebook music page is my big jam, because that kind of appeals to my demographic. And, we got around 11,000 people that have chosen to follow. And like I say, I update it every day. So there's pictures of my guitars, or if I'm working on a new song, and, add a little short video, and it's fun. Like I say, it keeps you in touch with your audience.
Definitely. Well, thank you again, David, and appreciate your time. I really do. I know we're all kind of on this lockdown. Well, I'm really not. I'm in Texas, but it's amazing. People are still wearing the masks here and doing the social distancing thing, believe it or not, which I was quite surprised at. But let's hope we can all get back to some normalcy someday. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, and get some barbecue.
We're going for barbecue tonight. I'm not sure where yet. Actually, I got a text from a that I meet up with, and they're looking to take me out on the town tonight. So I'm really excited. It's my first time in Texas, so we're gonna get after it.
Yeah, I love it down there. It's been too long for me.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you can get down here sooner than later.
Right on, man.
Appreciate your time. You take care, David. Thank you.
Alrighty, thanks.
Bye now. Bondzee Live. Bondzee on YouTube.